Welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, brought to you by the Investment Banking Leaders Club, your exclusive access to the industry's most successful leaders. These experts have closed thousands of deals, generating hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're here to share their strategies, insights, and leadership lessons that can fast-track your career. But the learning doesn't stop here. Join the Investment Banking Leaders Club at ibleadersclub.com for even more exclusive insights, leadership frameworks, and career accelerating resources and events. Thanks for joining us, and best of luck on your growth journey. So today, I'm pumped to be joined by someone whose career journey is a powerful example of ambition, adaptability, and leadership. I'm with Steve Rathbone, who's the Vice Chairman and Managing Director at Stout in New York. Now, Steve's path to investment banking didn't begin on Wall Street. He started in real estate and business sales in Perth, Australia, around 25 years ago, selling investment property and businesses. After completing a master's in financial services, he made the leap to New York City in January of 2005 with no job lined up, driven purely by a desire to build a career in M&A. Since then, he's built an incredible journey from boutique shops like IQ Venture Partners and HT Capital all the way to his current role at Stout. Now, having got to know Steve, he brings a rare blend of executional excellence, strategic business development acumen, and a deep commitment to developing talent. And in today's episode, we'll talk about leadership, mentorship, adaptability in uncertain markets, and why building a business development mindset from day one is critical for success. So let's get into this. Welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, Steve, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Peter. It's a great pleasure.
Excellent. Well, why don't we start at the beginning? As I mentioned, you grew up and were educated in Perth. You worked in real estate sales and then made that bold move to New York with no job in hand. So what drove that decision and how did that risk shape your early career?
It's a great question. It almost brings back post-traumatic stress in a way, right?
Sure.
Firstly, I would attribute it to a strong interest in finance and investment banking as a foundation for the decision. Secondly, in your early 20s, you have a unique courage where jumping into the deep end of the pool minus a life jacket feels like the right thing to do. You certainly, that changes over time, but at that point in your life, it feels right. And I think there's probably much greater reasons for that than we're all aware of. But it taught me that bold moves can be both terrifying and exhilarating. And such moves create the conditions for both great adversity and subsequently great success. And the journey between adversity and success is really formed by how you respond to that adversity. This becomes a foundational element for me personally, or became a foundational element of how I like to approach every day, every situation, every opportunity. It certainly keeps life intriguing, interesting, and exciting. So it's a little background as to how that decision was made and how it played out.
I could definitely understand how that bold move helped you build that skill set within the adversity area. I know once you got into New York, you built your career step by step, eventually becoming that managing director at HT Capital. What were the most formative experience for you during those years?
Starting at HT Capital in 2007, it was a milestone for me as HT was a respected boutique merchant banking firm and had a rich history and legacy with its roots dating back to the 1930s.
Oh, wow.
I had the ability and the opportunity to work closely with senior bankers to learn the trade while having the flexibility to construct my own theses on which industries may be ripe to market and to bank, while it opened my eyes to the possibilities in the industry and got me very excited to persevere and try to build a career in finance from that point. After joining the firm and getting some early traction, certain of the experiences which really formed my early years were firstly the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, and I'm sure many of my peers and colleagues these days would say the same thing. This period saw M&A activity effectively hit a stop and then slowly rebound in the subsequent years after. Certainly taught me patience and also, in hindsight, opened an amazing window to work on relationship building, networking, and professional development in a time where activity had slowed to a point where you could really focus on things other than deal execution. Around 2010, 2011, these initiatives really began to pay off. It led to the origination of opportunities, which I would not otherwise have had, and to new business, which was really the fruits, if you will, of efforts deployed during the financial crisis. This new business presented opportunities to market deals, prepare deals for market, learn industries, focus on specific verticals, which led to a virtuous cycle, I may say, of marketing, origination, and execution, which then created the engine for future successes. Of course, working closely with the clients during that period, and where I had built deep relationships in industry and with clients directly, enabled a rapid period of growth in my experience, both as a deal maker and as a true advisor to clients. Uh, Having a deeply vested interest in client success and achievement of their goals really formed the way I went to market and wanted to run my business at the time and the opportunities I had. So I credit this period really with getting my compass calibrated on client needs, putting client needs first in all instances, and using that as a real foundation for success.
I love how, again, you turned the adversity of the crisis into something positive, used it, as you put it, to build relationships, develop personally and professionally, marketing engine, and then setting your compass in the right direction around client needs. So love that. I hear that a lot from successful leaders who really make the most of those challenging periods to take a step forward. And in 2016-17, I believe, is when you transitioned to Stout. So what was behind that decision and what made that the right step for you?
Sure. So I made the move to Stout in 2017 after about 11 years with HT Capital. Stout at the time actually was still SRR, if I recall, when we were initially courting, was in the early stages of building a world-class investment banking platform, complementing its leading valuation business. It was evident to me that the leadership of the company was committing real resources behind investment banking while demonstrating a cultural alignment with me personally and my way of doing business. So that was very attractive at the time. Of the opportunities presented to me then, and there were several, Stout felt right. It was heading in a strategic direction that I thought the market was going in, and also offered tremendous upside in the ability to be one of the early senior professionals contributing to the investment banking platform and its future success. So I joined with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of fire in the belly at that time, which I'm happy to say has only grown in the 8 years since I've been at the firm, as we've achieved tremendous success together as a team and as an organization. So it's been a wonderful journey with some great colleagues.
Well, congrats to you and the team, obviously, on that growth. And I know you're ambitious and the team's looking to take further steps forward. So best of luck. And it's great to see that you took that role and you notified cultural alignment as being a key area, right? And I think
Very,
that's so
very
important.
important. Yeah.
Sometimes it gets overlooked. So I'm great that you brought that back to the fore.
I think for
And as
longevity in your career and to not be consistently jumping from firm to firm, which is unfortunate, but it does happen, targeting that correct cultural alignment up front is critical.
I want to jump into leadership. This is a leadership podcast, and I know this is an area where you're really strong. First of all, as vice chairman of investment banking, it appears this role goes beyond solely executing deals, which I know is very important. What does leadership look like at your level?
I would start with it's important to understand that my day to day remains very focused on leading merger and acquisition transactions for key clients in our investment banking practice. This means designing a go to market strategy, preparing for and getting to market, negotiating proposal terms once you've run a process or initiated negotiations, coordinating timing, due diligence, third party advisors, and closing a transaction to the satisfaction of our clients. To me and to our firm, the most senior level attention is a differentiating element that Stout offers investment banking clients relative to peers in many cases. And to me, vice chairman responsibilities include two core elements in addition to transaction responsibilities, which I'm delighted to be involved in. The first is, from an external basis, to provide our key clients on the banking side and also in other parts of the firm, tapping your network and relationships that can feed the broader Stout platform, providing those clients with comfort in knowing that they are receiving the most senior experienced transaction advice and management available in the market. That's critical. And secondly, internally, to provide leadership and mentoring to my colleagues, no matter what their role or position is within the firm, no matter what their needs are at the time, whether it's professional or personal. I consider this responsibility very important personally. Leading, growing, imbuing confidence in our team members has a pay it forward type effect, and I think very much differentiates why talented professionals would like to be part of our organization, but also part of our industry, and how and why they can go on and succeed. I think a little care tends to go a long way.
Love that. Really well understood through effective process to key clients and obviously leadership and mentorship. I know when we spoke, what's really struck me was that you described leadership as a selfless endeavor, really about giving back knowledge, supporting your team, setting an example, I think was one of the things that came up. So what's your approach to mentorship and development?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think the word selfless or selflessness, it's certainly underused, but it should be more widely adopted because I think it's a very simple approach. I look at what has my experience granted me in all areas of life, which may be of use to somebody else, right? Given what their goals may be, where they currently see themselves in their career and personal lives, and how they plan on maybe bridging that gap between where they are and what their goals are, right? So to me, that selfless leadership is all about translating that experience to another person to help them build a foundation and accomplish their goals. And I'd like to think I was always successful at that. It's certainly not the case, but I would say the intent is always very aligned with trying to help people bridge that gap.
And I know you shared with me that you believe in the idea of human cadence, which you explained as checking in regularly and supporting not just on professional support, but also on life events and
Mhm.
really nurturing people in a more holistic way. How do you build that into your leadership rhythm?
Yeah, it's a good question. I really believe that you cannot reach your highest potential unless your personal and professional lives are in balance. And each really needs to receive the attention required to form a foundation for the other to grow upon. How many superbly talented, high quality professionals have we all encountered in our careers who we've seen perhaps slip back down the mountain due to personal life turmoil or an inability to balance their personal and professional lives? So if you've been around long enough, that it does become a theme. How positively is your personal life impacted by simply being in the right role or right group or right team at work? Or if your ambitions recognized and nurtured, as opposed to the inverse? A suffocating environment would not be conducive to a strong personal life outside of work. So to me, it's almost like the body and mind philosophy where both are deeply interconnected and neither is separate from the other. And balance really has to be achieved for the whole of the individual to function to his or her potential. So considering it in this light, I always believe a holistic approach to leadership can be very effective while being fulfilling if your goals are to improve the lives of people you're involved with day to day.
Love that. I can see why that human approach and why you're such a good leader and why you're able to bring the best out of the team that you're managing. So
We'll
thanks
keep
for
doing our
sharing that.
best. So
That's it. It's every day we're learning in that
keep doing
area
our
as
best.
leaders, I think. I want to switch and talk a little bit about the market environment and adaptability. Again, having had your career started from adversity and building that basis, we know from 2011 to 2020 that it was a relatively stable environment. But the last 5 years have brought such volatility, inflation, supply chain shocks, geopolitical risk, and obviously the trade wars that we're all
Yeah,
experiencing now. So, what do bankers today need to understand about this new normal?
it's been a tricky environment to navigate. My view on what is now normal, if you will, is a much wider set of conditions and more rapid changes in those conditions. That implies to me more volatility than the period prior to COVID pandemic 2020. Anticipating a return to those pre-2020 conditions, I think, is going to be a rather futile exercise. I think learning to deal with a wider set of conditions, whether it's higher borrowing costs, whether it's navigating and honing your deal execution skills for a more complex environment and range of markets, and very importantly, being able to convey that in appropriate messaging to your clients is key. You have to let people know truthfully what they may or may not be getting into. So clients have the benefit of operating in a very real world environment every minute of every day. These are talented executives, successful people that have built businesses, sometimes from the ground up as a continuation of family, sometimes under the stewardship of an institutional investor, in just many scenarios, right? So they're operating in real world environments. They understand the changes taking place, both in their industries and in a more macro sense. I believe they have an appreciation for advisors that work with them that also have a real understanding of the conditions and that are dealing with day-to-day similar elements and have garnered an ability to translate this into comprehensive and effective transition strategy and advice. If there's a theme there, it's the world has changed. The world will continue to change. I believe we are in an environment and will remain in an environment where the set of conditions and outcomes will be broader going forward.
Thanks for sharing it. It makes a lot of sense. And I guess for those that have built their career between 2011, 2020 in an environment that's not been too volatile, how do these professionals stay sharp, stay focused, and step up to the new normal? Have you got any advice there?
Yeah, so we're talking about adaptability, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's probably a whole separate topic we could spend an hour on. I would encourage younger bankers and bankers who have perhaps built the bulk of their career through that period to view what we have now as similar to how we came out of the global financial crisis, right? It is a challenge. It's a big challenge, and it's an opportunity. And the hardest iron is forged in the hottest fires. Learning to operate in a challenging, evolving market provides lessons similar to what other classes have been through in history, i.e. the global financial crisis and times before that, COVID years after that, that you won't get in calm seas. The best navigators tend to have to deal with varying conditions. So ultimately, I think if you embrace it, if you accept it, you land in a more unique position where you will focus on honing your skills in a more demanding environment and then positioning yourself for greater success going forward. The two key words would be embrace and accept. And that forms the foundation as to where you go from there.
Great message. And back to what we were talking about really at the start of the interview about how to deal with that adaptability and the adversity that you face and turn it to an advantage. Having got to know you better, how strong you are in the business development area. And we've got a lot of leaders listening that might want to learn a bit from that. So I think one of the themes that you told me you champion is don't let execution overshadow business development. How do you personally create space to fill that pipeline, Steve?
Yeah, that's a great question because, it comes back to an element of balance. Business development to me is a constant, it's a consistent, ongoing initiative. It's never part of your business that can really afford to have too many gaps, breaks, hiatus, disruptions, etc. Right? It's almost got to be like just turning the engine on and letting it idle. Right? You really need to develop it to a point where it is a habit or a set of habits and nothing less, in my view. Business development is more than just filling the pipeline as well. It's an opportunity to engage with executives in industry, with institutional investors, with people in transition, with third-party advisors, whether it's other bankers, whether it's lawyers, accountants, consultants, etc. You're really learning on the move and educating as well, right, as part of that process. And all the while, you're building your presence, your personal brand, your firm's brand in the market, and you're putting credibility behind those brands to support that presence. To me, it's one of those, you turn the engine on, it never really goes off. You may hit the accelerator and the brake here and there, but you never really do any more than idle it.
Okay, and when we're talking about habit, I love that. Business development as a habit, that's what you
100%.
started with, which is really powerful. Not just filling the pipeline, but really engaging with the market, building that presence and brand awareness. So how have you built it into your habit?
Yes, you'll be delighted. There's so many analogies to use. If you step into a gym and you want to learn to box, you're going to throw a lot of left jabs until it becomes a habit. You're going to bob and weave your head until it becomes a habit. You're going to jump rope until it just becomes second nature. So I see it like that. I think successful endeavors and successful people are really a result of their compounded habits. And the same goes for people that have maybe veered off course. You've developed maybe negative sets of habits. So make it a habit behavior. It's components of an overall strategy for me. And I'm sure there's a lot more to add to this, but I'll sort of give you my personal view. Is firstly, it's a consistent publication of industry content. It's thought leadership. It's experience pieces pulling from your prior experiences and knowledge, which readers find value in, which resonates with your audience, which is usually a very targeted distribution audience. Secondly, it's the time in our business specifically, the timely marketing of successful transactions. Never ever be shy or embarrassed marketing your success. That's why you're in the business. Show people what you've accomplished. Get it out there. Thirdly, I would say this one's an easy one. Network, network, network. Show up at the breakfast, show up at the lunch, show up at the dinners, show up at the networking events, get on the plane, get in front of people, hand out your business cards, collect business cards, follow up. It's old school. It's not complicated, but it's a lot of fun. You meet wonderful people. You get great insights. You make lifelong friends, and it leads to business. So networking is absolutely critical to me. Fourth, I would say consistently being in touch with your circle of influence and counterparts in the business world. Add value to that network wherever possible. And I would give a hat tip there to my friends, whether they're an attorney, an accountant, a private equity professional, a private wealth manager, a former client, an executive in transition. There's so many folks out there serving different roles and in different phases of their career that if you've done your networking right, if you've built a network over time, you can add value in their lives. That is never forgotten. It's always remembered, and it always comes full circle. It doesn't have to come full circle right away. We're playing the long game here. Document your experience and use your stories to help and educate those who can benefit from the knowledge. All of this can be done in so many different forms of media these days, whether it's direct, whether it's via social media, in person, on the phone, etc., etc. There's just so many avenues to you if you're willing to pursue them. But again, the basis under it all, how can I be of value? How can I help others? That's key to keep in mind as you pursue a more holistic business development strategy.
I couldn't agree more that the value-added approach is so important. And if that's your compass that we talked about before, then you're going to go far. And thought leadership, timely marketing of deals, network, add value to counterparts, document the experience. I spoke to the former chairman at DC Advisory, and he shared that when you've won a deal, you have nanoseconds to get it out. At that moment, you're the most knowledgeable person about it. So never waste that opportunity. So it's great to hear it from you as well, see how important that is. What about on the junior side, though? Because I know the juniors, they've got heavy workload, demanding industry. They're maybe not client facing yet, and maybe they're not seeing the importance of that business development work. So how do you coach these juniors?
Yeah, for the juniors, because they have real day-to-day execution obligations and they're learning the trade. So it's very hard for them to spend time or devote resources to other activities, especially because when you get in the industry, you don't know what you don't know. So you're going down that path. I guess the way I would put it is it's almost describing it like keeping one eye on the long-term prize while you're executing your day-to-day. If you're an analyst or an associate or coming towards a VP role in this business means, and the pinnacle ultimately means becoming a managing director and running your own industry or vertical or industry group or your own book of business. That being in the business long term and reaching your potential, in my view. So to do that, you naturally need to be a business development champion at some point along the way. And then you need to maintain this. It's not just hey, look, I've arrived and I've achieved this and now I can relax. The business will come to me. It never does. It's a constant effort. It doesn't matter who you are. So while execution is critical and it's your day-to-day priority as a junior, get involved in BD initiatives where you can. Composing marketing materials, drafting reports, determining target lists, helping with the execution of outreach, sitting in on calls, attending meetings, tracking the results. To me, that's a critical element of your development as a junior banker into a senior banker at some point in time. So I would say keeping one eye on the prize, so almost like sleeping with one eye open, if you will.
Yeah, it's almost like filling your toolbox, isn't it? Like you say,
Absolutely.
getting the tools in, even if you can't do the real business dev, it's building up the skills that are going to enable you to do it much better later when you really need it. So that's a super interesting take, Steve. I haven't heard of that before. Most say go to the events and put yourself out there, but I think you're hitting on a more important note. So
They want to understand the science and demystify how business comes in the door. That, I think, just demystifying it is a huge element, a mental hurdle for juniors to get over, where they say, you know what, Steve may be good at that, but there's nothing unique or special about Steve aside from the effort. And this is how the effort comes about. Believing that you can have a path, provided you are willing to put in the effort, I think that's critical.
Now, I'm thinking back to what you said at the start about where your first career move and how you had a lot of time to learn from senior bankers and how that might have been really key to you in terms of building your skills. Really interesting. I want to chat a bit about mindset, motivation, personal growth, if you will. I know you have a clear philosophy around physical health, daily discipline, using downtime to learn. So can you walk us through your personal development routine?
Sure. Yeah, it's very, very important to me. And again, it's a habit behavior. And I like to say you live by it. With experience and maturity, the lens through which you may view personal development evolves over time, naturally. At a point, you come to see time as your most precious asset, and utilizing the available moments to you becomes paramount. So I would call it more, again, as a set of habits as opposed to a routine at this point. You're taking care of all the demands that are thrown at you on a deal or a set of deals you're working on at a time. You're staying current with industry and work trends and economic trends. You're paying attention to the geopolitical environment. You're scheduling time for mentoring, as we discussed before. You're conducting and engaging in daily physical activity, whether it's at the gym or at your own gym or just pounding the pavement for a while. It varies on where you are, where you're traveling, the resources you have access to, the level of intensity you want to approach your session with, etc. But it should always be a part of your set of habits. Time for reflection and rest, whether it's before bed or before a meeting or before some travel you have scheduled. And then sort of, if you really look at your schedule carefully, you do have time between events, between actions and activities, often in between tasks, or if you're on the treadmill or you're doing any other activity. I really love to work through various audio and written content. Generally gives me a feeling that I've packed the day. It's been a well-rounded day, balanced with both learning, educating, working, and working on your physical, your mental state, etc. Add the in-person networking and the social time to unwind a bit, and I feel it's a pretty balanced approach, but really utilizing your time, because again, it comes back to time being that precious commodity. So that's how I like to approach it. I don't like blanks in my day, if you will.
That's it. I can see that you're super proactive, and again, getting that right balance between what needs to get done and looking after yourself is so important. So
100%.
I know when we're busy, that personal development can sometimes get forgotten. So being intentional about it like you do, I think is a really good lesson for all. We talked about you didn't really have a set plan early on, but your ambition, your willingness to work through hard moments helped you really push through. And we've talked about the volatility that's going on at the moment. So what would you say to people trying to figure it out in real time?
If I had to distill it down to a response, the response would be to keep it simple. As a professional, it doesn't matter what profession you are in, you are going to taste and experience failure. In our world, in the investment banking world, you're going to taste a lot of failure. And you're also going to experience grand successes. This can be an incredibly fulfilling career. And you have some wonderful moments of achievement when you change people's lives, whether they're clients, whether they're working with you or for you. And there's just a lot of opportunity there, but you're going to fail. There's just no question about it, right? So amidst all that, what I would say, the one thing you can always control and come back to is your personal willingness to persevere and to never, ever seek the exit, never quit. I truly believe the only way you can really lose in life is if you quit. And you can fail over and over and over again, but you personally are ultimately the one who gets to make the decision to come again, to get off the canvas, to walk back through the door, to shake it off. And that's 100% on you. No one can take that from you.
Yeah,
So
that
I think
mindset.
that simple empowerment, right?
Love that. Simple but powerful, as you say, right? Back to that mindset and how you control that and control how you react to the situations and whether you turn them to the opportunities we talked about before or not. So thanks, Steve. Believe it.
You could have terrible days, you could have bad things happen at work, just bad luck, strings of bad luck, but you get to make the call to come again. No one can take that from you.
I hear you. Believe it or not, Steve, the time's motored by and we're coming towards the end of the session. But a couple questions to ask. Our regular listeners know that I ask this of all guests, which is, I believe leaders are readers.
Certainly.
So which books, podcasts, or even materials do you recommend that have had an impact on you?
I'm looking left here and I got a big bookshelf and I look at my phone and there's dozens, hundreds and hundreds of Audible books and whatnot. And it was just a simple move a couple of years ago, really changed my life, where I just downloaded the Audible app on my iPhone and
Mm-hmm.
threw that on there. And I started browsing the libraries, which I would otherwise have been ordering the hardcover or the paperback. But as you know, investment banking, you're on the road a lot. Therefore, the ability to simply listen to content while you drive, ride a train, sit on a plane, play it in the background while you work, are honed in on an activity. It's a novel way of cracking open those periods of time we were talking about just recently, and filling that time with knowledge. So generally speaking, I would like to have 3 to 4 personal development audiobooks on the go at a time. And usually these could relate to pretty much any topic, whether it's self-improvement, whether it's confidence, whether it's teaching or educating, or any topic that you're interested in that has a personal development element. I have a hard time just finishing one in one shot, so I usually like to have 3 or 4 going where I could come back to them in different sections. It's not for everybody, but it's the way I find it most effective for me. And it's sometimes mood dependent. I always like to have 1 to 2 solid motivation books going at a time. It reinforces the things you should already know about how to handle yourself day to day. And it's just a constant reinforcement. I try to take notes and distill the books into a few paragraphs of bullet pointed notes and just keep that always on hand. And then 1 or 2 pieces of light nonfiction or fiction. That's always nice to sometimes just bring yourself down and you'd be surprised what you can learn from fiction. And also, I find it helps me go to sleep at night pretty effectively, so that's a good thing. And in conjunction with that and sort of underlying it all, I would religiously have anywhere from 5 to 10 pieces of content on topics like meditation, relaxation, sleep, and other more perhaps exotic topics like lucid dreaming. And again, it comes down to filling the time. It's always wondered, how could I utilize sleep better? You're just zoned out for 5, 6, or 7 hours. And lucid dreaming was one of those things. I thought I'd give it a shot and managed to successfully pull it off several times. And it opens up other worlds. It's fascinating. So that's how I view content. And I may have dodged the question on specific titles, but I figured you'll know what I mean.
Okay. Well, it's interesting to hear how varied and how much you have on the go at one time. Trying to maximize your sleep time or
Correct.
use of when you're asleep is a great one. So I appreciate that. Last question, but not least, Steve. If you could go back and give one piece of advice to your younger self starting out, what would it be?
Sure, that's a good one. Again, I could probably give a lot of advice to my younger self. Again, sticking with the theme of simplicity, be patient, don't be so easily disappointed by failure, persevere, and forget your mistakes and failures. Don't dwell on them. It is what it is. If you spend too much time dwelling there, you won't spend time playing to your strengths, and you should absolutely play to your strengths every single opportunity you get. That's how I would sum up advice to my younger self.
Love that. I'm sure younger Steve would be grateful, and hopefully that audience are taking
He
a lot
may have
away
been
from
too
that as well.
blockheaded to listen. So.
That's a great way to end the episode. So, Steve, thank you so much for all the time, your insights. I think from your journey to your leadership style, growth mindset, there's so much that our audience can take away and learn from today's conversation. So, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time.
It's a great pleasure, Peter. Thank you for having me. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you.
This episode of the podcast was brought to you by the Investment Banking Leaders Club. And to keep leveling up your career, join the club at ibleadersclub.com for exclusive insights, leadership strategies, and career growth resources straight from the industry's top professionals. I want to say thanks to our key partner, Altrum, the global leader in financial deal gifts, awards, and recognition, for their ongoing support of our mission to empower both aspiring and senior investment banking leaders. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, best of luck on your growth journey.